Well, hello and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show. We're in the midst of Lent, and who better than the wonderful Canon Roger Hall, MBE, to tell us all about it. How are you doing, Roger?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew. And yes, Lent is moving along now. I remember we talked a week or two ago about Shrove Tuesday and pancakes, and then Ash Wednesday and what we're doing. So yes, we're now sort of getting into the whole business of Lent and what that means.
And it's quite difficult. We touched on last time that people have been giving up so much already during these extraordinary times. And it's tough for people, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, that's a really significant theme, that. And it's interesting in my chats and conversations on Zoom, FaceTime, just with clergy friends over telephone calls. Interesting, a lot of them have picked up this theme that, in fact, the idea of giving up is quite tricky this Lent, because a lot of people have been giving up since last March, basically. And certainly in this lockdown, since the beginning of the year, they've not seen family, they've not seen friends, they've given up their sort of family bit and the friends bit, but they've also given up their sport, they've given up going to the cinema, to the theatre, they've given up such a lot that it's been quite hard for the clergy to say to people, well, on top of this, one of the great themes of Lent is self-sacrifice. So they always say there are three themes in Lent: prayer, service, and self-sacrifice. Those are the three things which Christians try to focus on in these 40 days as they prepare themselves to get to Holy Week and celebrating, the resurrection on Easter Sunday. So it is quite tricky to encourage people to give up when they've already, given up a lot already. So you're right, absolutely.
I remember last year you gave up coffee, and I remember how difficult that was. And my wife Chandra also gave up coffee. She reminds me, which is we know how difficult that can be. But I liked what you said last time when we were discussing it, because it's actually, you can do a positive thing. So rather than giving something up, actually the focus could be on putting some money aside or whatever it is to benefit. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. What I, along with lots of other clergy, have asked people, and we've done this a little bit through our online services, through our online newsletters and thoughts of the day and things like that, is to, it doesn't have to be an instantaneous answer, but to think a little bit during this 6-week period of Lent about some positive things that you can do rather than giving up. And of course, sometimes the two can go together. So in your case, for example, with Chandra and giving up coffee, it could be that the doing bit of that is putting the money that you would spend by slipping into the local cafe, like most of us do. Oh, let's just have a coffee, Andrew. We'll meet up. I'll see you, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We pick it. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say which coffee shops anyway, but anyway, what I mean.
They sponsor these. We'll welcome all of them. They can sponsor it. It should be good.
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's Costa or Pret or wherever it is, you pick up a coffee and you meet. So what we're saying to people is that, and I'm a regular doing that. I meet people all the time. It's part of what ministry is about, is to meet and have coffee together and chat and talk and see how people's well-being is to put all that money that you would have put on coffee into a jar or something, work it all out, and you'd be surprised. I mean, people have said to me, I'm really surprised at how much money I spend, for example, on coffee, through a 6-week period. And it actually amounts to quite a significant amount of money. And I do support a number of charities, it's difficult to say. We all support different sorts of charities, whether it's Save the Children, Christian Aid, whether it's the local hospice, whether it's, whatever. I mean, we've had quite a focus, as you know, here at the Tower of London, here in the chapel on the Tower Hamlets Food Bank. I'm very proud to say that we have a very, very close relationship with them. And during this lockdown, I've actually gone myself and worked there. I do a morning a week. We're helping out at the food bank. And, quite a number of my congregation have use this Lent period in terms of doing to save up by giving up something. So they are in a way giving something up, but they're doing something by gathering money together, which they can then use to help the food bank. So that's one aspect of doing, that's bringing the two together. But you don't have to give up at all in one respect. I don't think really given up very much this Lent at all. But what I am trying to do is I'm trying to create 2 times in the day, 2 moments in the day, half an hour each, when it's completely quiet. completely quiet in my life. I'm very fortunate to have a chapel right outside my front door. So I can leave my house, come across here, I say my prayers every morning, every evening, try and get in here half an hour early, and just be silent and just be quiet. Not doing anything, if that makes sense, but the doing is in the silence. And there's that wonderful bit in Psalm 46 where it says, "Be still and know that I am God." And I've always maintained that unless you listen, you don't hear. And if less we listen, we will never hear God. So I've been trying to, develop by doing some periods of silence. And then for me, who my wife always jokes about, when I die, she's going to have my gravestone in the shape of a book with the words on it, written on it, "In a moment." When every time she asks me do something, I always say, "In a minute," because I've got those in a book. I've decided to really try and get hold of a couple of good bits of theology, which will, be a little bit of a challenge and a bit more than the usual stuff, and read those and have a concentrated moment, maybe once a day or possibly twice a day, when I sit down in the peace and quiet and try and read. So that's doing something as opposed to necessarily the giving up bit.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I like the principle of giving up. I think that's it's a great idea. But also these times they have made us refocus our energies. And beforehand, everybody used to ask people, "How are you?" "Well, I'm busy," as though busy was a big accolade. And you're right. Those moments of being able just to reflect and to be quiet are very powerful.
Yes, I mean, and the other thing, Andrew, is that now that the Prime Minister's announced the road ahead and we know where we're going, I think it's almost sort of very precious that we may not have this time period. It's almost sort of Lenten theme that's been going on throughout the whole of the pandemic. We might not get that again. And in fact, what will happen and we all rejoice at that. I mean, I'm the first to say we're rejoicing at seeing family and friends and going to the cinema and the theatre and going out for a meal and church being back to normal and lots of weddings and all the rest of it. But I won't have that moments, those opportunities of peace and quiet that are a gift in a way during this pandemic. Maybe again, there's an enforced silence on us, an enforced peace, and allowing people. I was listening to a radio report, which I was extraordinary. The number of people who are doing jigsaws, who are now absolutely taken up with doing jigsaws. There are great dining room tables which haven't been used. This is where it came from, for having family and friends around for a meal, have been overtaken by jigsaws, and families come in, and I'm not saying they do it all the time, but they sit down together, and one of them comes in for 10 minutes and tries to find one piece and do a jigsaw. It'd be wonderful to think that some of that carried on, even within us when we get back to it. You see what I'm saying? There's a sort of balance in the whole thing, really.
It's, as I touched on, it's that refocus of what's important in life, and it is those elements. Board games, the sale of those have shot through. Families, when they can, if they are in their bubble and they're at home together, they're getting an opportunity to speak about things they wouldn't normally speak about. People are reevaluating how important people are, like teachers and essential workers and so on and so forth. And it was that Banksy artwork, which I always mention to people, where he's done this thing with a child, and next to the child is this bin, and they've got all the superheroes. There's Batman and Spider-Man and Wonder Woman, all in the bin, all discarded. And the child is playing with an NHS nurse because that's the new superhero. And what I love about this time, so it's refocusing what's important to us.
Yeah, Barbara and I play Scrabble. Everybody who knows us really well know that we've played Scrabble all our married life. And during this lockdown, I wouldn't say every night, but 3 or 4 nights a week, certainly after dinner, we've sat down and played a game of Scrabble. My aim of the game is to beat her. Because, and I'm saying this on your television program, the number of times I've beaten her, you could probably put on one hand. She says, of course, it might have something to do with my lack of being able to spell, which doesn't help. But I mean, she's really good. But again, I laughed. We both laughed and laughed yesterday because I don't know if you heard, but Sophia Loren was on Desert Island Discs this week, and one of the things that made everybody laugh on Desert Island Discs is that she's also a Scrabble player. But she said publicly, "I cheat." I'm one of the world's greatest cheats. And Sophia Loren's always been one of my heroes. I always think she's so glamorous and gorgeous and a great actress and all the rest of it. She really is a legend in my life. I was rather disappointed to hear that she cheated at Scrabble.
I love it. Well, and do you cheat? Have you ever cheated at Scrabble?
Oh, I couldn't answer that. I'm a priest. I couldn't possibly answer.
Like, I don't know, I mean, do you have a dictionary? Whenever I play, we always have a dictionary. We always say, well, that's not a word. And you look it up and sort of hope sometimes that it is.
Goodness me, as the Pope Catholic, we have to have a stack of dictionaries by the side when we're playing. I tell you, Mrs. Hall's always inventing new words and the words that I've never heard of before. I'm thinking, where have you got that word from, etc. Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to everything we've been saying, Andrew, in this sort of period of Lent. That I really hope, and I know you think it as well, that I hope we can keep the best of what's been the most difficult during the pandemic, which has been this time, taking advantage of moments to reflect, moments of silence, listening to music. I mean, the other thing is that there's always this thing, I think it was a number of experts in the music world have said, what saddens them is that so many of us put music on as background music and don't just listen to it for the sake of as a piece of music, and I think that's something that's developed also during. I've spoken to a number of people who said to me, actually I listened. I've taken it. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony was on. I've always, it's great, but I might be reading a book at the same time or something. He said, actually, I've just sat there and listened to it and thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And those are the things that I hope we can take with us, beyond this pandemic.
I think you're right. Seeing the power of music. I have many musicians on this show, the rich and the famous, and those who write the compositions behind all of that. The power of music is really, really.
Yeah.
And the other thing which you've been doing is you've been using technology a lot yourself. You do your thoughts of the day and various other things as well. And you were talking very recently today, in fact, I think it was, about temptation. Tell me, because a final thing about Lent is obviously the temptation. How do you deal with that?
Well, we all attempt. Everybody's tempted in their own way, but it doesn't matter. I don't care who it is, whether in large ways and small ways. I always say, I mean, the thing about temptation, it ties in, of course, very often with the business of giving up. So, Chandra and I have given up coffee, and then halfway through Lent, somebody says, would you like a cup of coffee? And you're tempted to say yes. And sometimes Chandra wouldn't do it, of course, but I might suddenly say, oh, stuff it, I'm just desperate. I need to be sparked up. I'm just feeling, and have a cup of coffee. I've always said to people, the great thing about the Christian gospel is that it doesn't matter how many times we fail, we can pick up and start again, because the Christian gospel is all about forgiveness and love. And just as you would be with your children, I am with mine, and just as my mother was and is with me in forgiving me when things, don't get them right, is that it's the ability to say sorry and start again. And of course, there are some people who are absolutely disciplined who can, it doesn't matter what they've given up or what they've done or anything else, they'll be 100% fantastic about it. But for most of us, we get tempted and occasionally we fail. But I don't see that ever as the end of the world in any shape or form at all, because that's not what I think Christianity and gospel is all about. It's all about redemption and forgiveness and starting again, a new beginning, a new start. And that can happen at any time. And that's what's so wonderful. And that's all born out of love, which to me is the central part of what, everything that we try to teach and believe in.
Fantastic. Well, I could resist anything but temptations.
Yes, well, that's what Weil said. Yes, I know. We all know that conversation.
Roger, it's been a delight. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Yes, wish you all the best. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.
Bye-bye. So my thanks again to my very special guest, the Reverend Canon Roger J. Hall, MBE, who's Deputy Priest in Ordinary to Her Majesty the Queen at the Tower of London. If you'd like to be a guest or have any suggestions for guests, you can write to me at guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. Don't forget, you can follow me at Andrew Eborn at octopustv, and you can subscribe on all of the usual platforms. But for me, for now, thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Be good. Bye-bye.